So, hello, Paolo.
Hello.
In few years, you became one of the most important and rewarded author of science fiction. But in France, some people don't know you. It's a shame. Can you introduce yourself?
Okay. Let's see. How do you introduce yourself? It sounds arrogant when I introduce myself. So my name is Paolo Bacigalupi. I've been writing science fiction for about the last 7 years. My first novel, The Wind-Up Girl, won the Hugo, the Nebula, the Compton Crook, the John W. Campbell, the Locus, the Sayun Award, the Grand Prix La Marginale. It goes on and on and on. It's very embarrassing and wonderful at the same time. My second novel was a young adult novel called Shipbreaker, and it was a finalist for America's National Book Award and also won the Michael L. Prince Award, which is our highest award for young adult literature. Since then, I've written for both adults and young adults and also children. Mostly what I focus on is either environmental or sustainability topics. Those are sort of the areas that I'm interested in. I'm interested in climate change. I'm interested in genetic engineering. I'm interested in corporate control of food. I'm interested in energy, energy scarcity, things like that, and trying to tell stories that are interesting about those topics.
Okay, so
is that okay?
It's perfect. You an author of science fiction. Why science fiction in the first place?
Okay. So for me, what I found is that science fiction has a set of tools for talking about the world that you don't have in traditional literature. The core tool that I'm interested in is that science fiction allows us to ask this question: if this trend goes on, what will the world look like? If this thing that's happening right now becomes more and more exacerbated, becomes more and more serious, what will the world look like? Where will we go with it? And you can ask that question about a technology like computer science. You can say, where will we go with networks, and how far will we go, and what would happen? For me, I'm interested in questions like, what happens if climate change is becoming an increasing problem, and at the same time we're trying to pretend like it doesn't exist? What kind of world does that give us? Where do we end up? And what science fiction allows us to do is, so the core, I think, okay, so backing up, I think that the core function of fiction is to create empathy in a reader for an experience that's alien from us. You know, it allows us to live inside of the skin of somebody who's a different gender or a different class or a different, comes from a different part of the world. And you can learn about their world, and you can live inside their world, and you can live inside that character and believe in it and feel it and understand. And I think that's what fiction does, is it always allows us to understand things that otherwise would have been very far away from us. What science fiction does is it allows us to extend that empathy out into the future. So if, for example, I'm writing about climate change and I give the reader, you, an opportunity to live inside of a future broken world where climate change has devastated a part of your home, where your place has run out of water, where you're on the move because you don't have any place to be anymore. If you get to live inside of the skin of that climate refugee, that's another opportunity to build empathy with an idea of ourselves, our future selves, or with an idea of what our children will live inside of, and it connects us to that future. Beyond that, what I think science fiction does is that because we go out into that future, because I can build a crazy, broken future that you've lived inside of and that you've experienced viscerally, deeply and viscerally experienced, when you close to the book and you come back to your present moment, the idea is that you're going to look around the world differently. And science fiction contextualizes our present by telling us where we might be headed when we come back to our present moment and we open the newspaper and we read a story about climate change, or we read a story, an article about drought. When we look at those things, suddenly those quiet stories that we otherwise might have ignored, those have meaning, because we can read a story about Lake Mead on the Colorado River and see that they've hit record lows. And if you see that reservoir has record lows, you see also, you remember that, oh, I wrote about it in this book, and in this book there's this disaster going on, and suddenly you say, oh, this is the first step towards that. And suddenly something that seems very inert and not very interesting and kind of boring suddenly becomes extremely real and extremely important to you. And that's what I think science fiction does more than any other literature. Is it allows, because you can go out into the future, then come back, suddenly your present moment has more context and meaning, and you have a sense of what our directions might be. Mm-hmm. Long answer.
No, it's excellent. So you directly talking about your last book, Water Knife.
Yes.
The Water Knife. And I think in France, for the next month, in USA, your book is a little bomb about water, about the question of water. How do you build this story? Because in the beginning it was a short story. In your first book, Palm 6 and Other Story.
Right.
How do you pass to the short story on this huge
Right. Okay. Yeah, so when I'm thinking, normally what happens when I'm writing novels, and the first thing that happens is that I actually need to believe that a topic is big enough and complicated enough and interesting enough for me to spend a lot of time playing around with it with a book, because it takes a year or a year and a half to write, and so to commit to the writing, you just have to think that a topic is complicated enough to be interesting. But for this, I had written that story, The Tamarisk Hunter, years ago, and for me, in some ways, it was about drought, it was about climate change, it was about the changing environment, and at the time, especially because I was a short story writer at that time, I really believed that I was done with the concept. And then it was only later that it started feeling like, wait, this concept still hasn't been talked about enough. These ideas are worth exploring more. But if I'm going to do a book about it, I really want to get the feeling, and this is with books generally for me, is that I want to be able to see this idea from many different angles. And so originally I started with the idea of climate change and the idea that, what happens to us if we don't plan for it and accept that the science about climate change is real. What if we fail to adapt? What if we fail to plan? Where do we get? So that's the general thrust of the story that I wanted to tell, or the place that I wanted to live in with my characters. And then for me, normally, after I have that big idea, I start thinking about, okay, where is this going to happen? I say, okay, I do want to go back to the Colorado River Basin, because I know in the southwestern United States there have been an increasing number of people and an increasing number of demands for water on a complicated water system. There's snow that falls in the Rockies, it melts, it flows down through the Colorado. There are 7 different states, everything from Colorado to California. 1,000 miles of distance is covered and supported by this one river, and a huge amount of geographic area is supported by this one river system. So, and we know that there are too many people already on it, and there's more and more demands, and we also know that the supply is decreasing, and so it's the perfect place. So you have a geographical place, and then from there, I start looking for the people who will help me go through that world. And so for me, I'm looking for characters like Angel Velasquez, the water knife, who works for Las Vegas and cuts water. So he blows up other people's water treatment plants so that Las Vegas can keep pumping water for themselves. He gives people offers on their water rights that they can't refuse. He's sort of a 007 or James Bond of water. And I have him in the story partly because he's interesting and it gives you action and excitement and, all of that, but also to illustrate what Las Vegas is like. And this is a city that's planned, and this is a city that has thought ahead, and they aren't nice, but they are making sure that they've got their water. And that, so Angel, gives us a certain window into how do you solve the problem of not having enough water? And Las Vegas's solution is, well, we'll cut everybody else's and we'll make sure we get ours.
It's a solution.
Yeah, it's a solution. It's not a nice solution, but it's a solution. Yeah. So when I have a character like that on the page, that gives me opportunities to talk about my big idea, but it also gives you a lot of excitement and fun too, because he gets to blow things up. And I'm looking for both things with all my stories. I'm looking for my story to both be interesting at the idea level, but also to be entertaining. And I want both of those things in the story. So, then though I wanted to have a journalist. I like Lucy Monroe as a journalist because she gives me a chance to take the reader through many different aspects of what Phoenix looks like when it didn't plan and it's not built well and it isn't getting itself organized. And she can interview different people. She can have all these different access to experiences, and she can also have sort of a philosophical, sort of academic view of how Phoenix got to where it is. And so that gives the reader another window into the world. And then I wanted to have Maria, who's a climate refugee. She's a loser. She's the person who's lost everything because everybody else has failed to plan. She's the person who's the victim of this whole broken climate. And
Maria reminds me one of your personal character.
Okay.
Emiko.
Okay.
In the Winner Girl.
Right. Okay.
Character who have a lot of suffering.
Right. Yeah. Maria. Yes. Maria's at the bottom of the pile. Yeah. And much like Emiko. Yes. And so she's another window, and so I want all of those points of view to see this world, and so that the world will feel big to the reader also, because you can see so many points of view. And then after I've got those characters, and after I've found the right characters, that's when I start trying to figure out how to tell a story inside of this world. Like, how will these characters possibly interact? What might they be doing? What are the things that I know about them that tell me what they want, so I can build a whole story out of it? So it's almost always from big idea to the place, to the characters, and finally to the story.
And to end this little interview, you talk in all your books of ecological situation, even if in your young adult book, Zombie Ball, for example.
Right.
And when I read you, I have a question about what do you think, not in science fiction, but in the actual world of the climatological debate. What about the ecology in USA? What do you think about that debate?
I think our priorities are wrong in the United States. We still don't understand how serious our environmental problems are. I think that politically it's I think specifically with climate change that the United States is playing catch up still. We're still behind, and it's partly because we've been so very confused, mostly by big companies like ExxonMobil, which spent a lot of money to keep people confused about climate change and how serious it was. But for 20 years, the science has told us that climate change is real and that it's going to be a huge problem for us. And for all of that time, we haven't acted quickly enough. And even now, finally the United States is getting on board with some things. It still feels like it's too little and we need to do more. And I worry, especially in the context of something like the current presidential election, where climate change doesn't get discussed at all. It's not the topic, even though I think it's going to define everything about our future. And so for me, and that's one of the reasons why I write something like The Water Knife, is because I'm anxious. I'm anxious about the way that we casually treat something that is going to define everything about our future.
In some way, do you think it's too late? Or it's never too late?
Well, I mean, if it's really too late, then fuck it. Let's just do, let's burn the world down. I think, to me, well, I don't think it's too late. I think that as we wait longer and longer, we have to get more and more serious about how we deal with it. I think that it's a funny thing that like both we are so incredibly stupid as a species that we can wait this long to deal with a problem, but I think that we are also ingenious, and we are, when we're faced with real problems and we understand them, we have a great capacity to engage with those problems and to try to solve them. And so I think, there is potential still for us to solve our problems, but at each time we wait, it just gets a little bit harder, and it gets a little more. It's going to be, and our children will live in a changed world because of it, because we waited. I don't think they'll thank us. I think that we can avert a total disaster still, but we need to get on it. And I think that and I do think it is too late for us to avert some things, and I think that our children will curse us for it. They will say that we were immensely selfish, and so.
And last question: do you have I think you have other project for the future?
Yeah, I've always got a project.
Yeah.
The two things I'm thinking about right now, one of them is I'm going to probably write the next. I've written a short story called Mika Model, and I think I might turn it into a novel, just because it's actually fun and sort of interesting to me. And then there's another bigger, more complicated project that I'm thinking about, and I'm interested in language and how we frame what it means to be human now, because we think of ourselves as human beings who are just, I'm just this person sitting in this chair, but the truth is that I think that that's the same conception that we've had of ourselves as human beings ever since we were, essentially apes on the savannah. We haven't adapted our own understanding of what it means to be human now. We don't understand what it means to be humans who are more than 9 billion people on the planet. We've scaled up. What does it mean to be humans as a species at scale? What does it mean to be a human being who can own a cell phone? Because once I own that cell phone, it means that I think of myself as sitting in this chair, but it turns out my hand reached around the world and touched China, where it was manufactured, and that reached around the world to Peru, where the lithium came from for the batteries. And so I think of myself as being in one place, but I'm all over the world touching it and influencing it. And with things like climate change, you're seeing that, a decision that I make today, if I fly to Paris today, that decision ripples out across generations. The carbon that I burn to come here will affect my children, it'll affect my grandchildren. So I exist through time. And we don't understand these things about ourselves, that we, every decision, every cell phone we buy isn't just this cell phone, it's actually 9 billion cell phones, because we make small decisions that add up. There's this thing where we're operating at scale, our impacts happen through time, we touch the entire world. And we don't have a language to sort of talk about that, to talk about what it means to be a modern human. And I think because of that, it makes it very difficult for us to deal with complex problems like climate change. So I'm thinking I want to write some kind of story that allows us to think about ourselves differently and gives us a language that allows us to understand and sort of start moving around some concepts about who we are as a species. I think, people like George Orwell, when he wrote 1984, he coined terms that helped us understand the world better. When he says Big Brother, we know something now. When we use that word, we can talk instantaneously. When you hear about the NSA spying on countries and on people, we can say Big Brother, and there's a meaning to that. We have a framework to understand what the NSA is doing. And I feel like because we don't have the right frameworks, we can't actually solve our problems right now. So, I'd like to write some kind of very entertaining thriller, science fiction story, exciting story all about language. And so but that's a complicated project, so maybe it'll take a couple of years. Okay.
So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
A last word for your French readers?
I really actually appreciate how much everyone has supported me over here, and I'm amazed actually that the books have found so many happy readers, and I'm grateful for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.